Hello, everyone. It's Tuesday. We've made it this far, and we're getting ready for Finding Atticus Chapter 5. We have a workman here repairing the internet dish on our roof, so you might hear a little noise from that. I apologize. So, Nikki, Christine, Susan, nice to see you. So that must mean Lizzie is here too. Hi, Lizzie. So before we get started, can you guys see me? Because it says to me that our internet is gone, but I can see you, so I'm hoping you're still there. Can someone give me a wave or something? Just a comment like, yep, here I am, or anything like that. Perfect. Hi, June. Thanks. Now I know that I'm still here. So, for those who are using this as their ELA, English Language Arts lesson, I do have vocabulary for the day. The first word is jostled, which means to shake up. Lurking, remaining hidden. Perimeter, the outer area of something. Savoring, to really enjoy. Omitting, omitting, to leave out. Abruptly, which means suddenly or unexpectedly, like my internet abruptly stopping a moment ago. And distraught, which is very upset. Luckily, I did not get distraught over the internet and instead waited to see if it was going to come back, and it did. Yay! I just want to remind you about similes. Remember, those are literary devices where you compare things using like or as. And Finding Atticus Chapter 5 actually starts right out with a simile. So you'll hear that right away. And then in the first paragraph, there's another one. I have some questions for the end, so I'll save those and I'll get right to the reading. Remember when we left off Chapter 4, Jamie had just set up the cabin and had just gone to sneak Atticus out of the kennel. And now she's hoping she doesn't get caught, and it's dark out. Chapter 5, Friday, Lost Dog. The darkness was like a thick blanket cloaking the woods. Tree frogs and cicadas competed to drown the night stillness with their voices. When Jamie's bike tire crunched over the dried grasses, the sounds in the immediate area were suddenly silenced, as if the world was holding its breath. Then, little by little, the invisible inhabitants regained their courage. A brave cicada chirped somewhere nearby. Then a few more joined in, until those that had been frightened by Jamie and Atticus's intrusion were satisfied they could resume, and the whole chorus sang. For the ride through the streets and past her grandparents' house, Jamie had used the flashlight with the smaller beam. But now that she was in the field where she was nowhere near the houses, she took out the handheld spotlight with the wider and longer beam. Continuing to grip Atticus's leash in her left hand, she struggled to hold the flashlight and the handlebar with her right hand. The ruts in the path jostled the bike, forcing the light's beam to bounce erratically from side to side. Erratically is another good word. That means that it doesn't have any particular pattern. A few times, Atticus pulled to the end of his leash, and the bike jerked and nearly toppled, but somehow Jamie managed to keep it upright. In quick, sweeping movements, she scanned the field, alert for any wild animal that might be lurking. On occasion, coyotes, fox, and bear had been spotted in the region, although not necessarily in these woods. Jamie herself had seen nothing more dangerous than a rabbit or woodchuck in the area, but it didn't matter. In the dark, alone, unable to see more than a few feet around her, she feared the animals might be inclined to wander at night. By the time she reached the edge of the woods, her neck and shoulders ached from tension. A boat-sized spotlight would have been the only thing that could make her feel better right now. That or her dad. But she wiped those thoughts from her mind. She didn't have either, and thinking of her father made her feel even more alone than she already did. At the opening to the trail into the woods, she stopped the bike and slid off the seat, straddling the frame. Atticus panted next to her. She'd pushed him hard, afraid at any second a car would come along and spot them. But luck had been with her. Only one truck had passed them, and she'd seen the beam of the headlights hitting the trees at the top of the hill before they could see her. She ducked with Atticus into a stand of trees until the truck went by. Then she urged him out and pedaled steadily, with him at a full trot most of the way. Atticus nudged her with his nose, and she looked down. "I can give you a drink in a few minutes, buddy." She stroked the top of his head, thankful the hot day had settled into a more comfortable, cooler night. All afternoon she had worried about leaving him in the cabin if the temperature was still high. She turned to look back the way they had just come. A few specks of light in the distance were the only hints of her grandparents' house. What was she doing? There was still time to abandon her plan and return Atticus to his kennel. As long as she was careful, no one would even know she'd planned such a crazy stunt. Charlotte would go out to the kennel in the morning, and Atticus would be right where he belonged. But was that where he belonged right now? Sinking her fingers deeper into the dog's fur, she leaned down and pressed her cheek to the top of his head. No, if she turned around now, in less than 48 hours, Atticus would be gone, out of her life forever. Just thinking of the possibility put a lump in her throat. Atticus was with her. In her heart, she truly believed that's where he belonged. With renewed resolve, she rested her bike against a tree and then hoisted her backpack onto her back. Making a wide arc, she pointed the spotlight's beam into the dense woods. Although it was difficult to see more than a few open patches between tree trunks, the area appeared clear. She clicked her tongue and gave a light, half-hearted tug on Atticus's leash. "Come on, Addie, let's get you to the cabin." She hoped he was braver than she was. When she'd imagined bringing him here at night, she hadn't pictured the inky blackness that swallowed the rest of the world. Scenes from every horror movie she'd ever watched raced through her mind. Why did so many of them have the scariest things happen in the woods? Jamie shivered and tried to focus on the ground in front of her, but her heart jumped with every rustle of the leaves. She snapped the light up in a frantic search for the source of the noise, but all she saw were tree branches that looked like menacing black arms and fingers dipping down to snatch her. Atticus, sensitive to her reactions, swung his head from side to side, apparently searching for the danger that Jamie sensed. Did she only imagine that his fur seemed to stand in a ridge down his back? Did she really detect his low-pitched growl when they stopped to listen to the hoot of a lone screech owl, angry at having its hunt disrupted? By the time Jamie and Atticus reached the cabin, she had almost turned around a dozen times. Now she was glad she'd not given up. She twirled the combination into the lock on the door and swung it open. Before they went in, she shone the flashlight beam around the small interior, feeling foolish for even thinking something or someone would be inside when she'd just removed the lock. Once inside, she closed the door then removed Atticus's leash. His nose immediately started twitching. With his tail wagging, he sniffed at every inch of wall along the cabin's perimeter. Jamie took a wooden match from the box on the shelf and lit the 3 candles in glass jars. They were from her mother's favorite candle company. Her mother used them throughout their house, claiming the blueberry and vanilla cupcake scents created a homey, calm atmosphere. Jamie hoped the scents would cut through the earthy smell of the cabin and make her feel calm now. Atticus's nose shot in the air when he reached the area where Jamie had stored his treats. He plunked himself on the dirt floor and stared up at the shelf, his tail brushing the ground. Jamie laughed and ruffled the fur on his head. "It didn't take you long to find those." She took the blue package down and removed the biscuit, holding it above Atticus. "Don't think you're getting a treat without earning it." She gave him 2 commands, one to sit and the other to give his paw. When he immediately complied, she rewarded him. "You still have to win the next show. We can't get sloppy with you." He gobbled down the treat and sat in front of Jamie, his brown eyes pleading for more. No more until I leave, pal." The candle flames flickered, making the shadows in the cabin dance. Jamie opened a gallon bottle of spring water and filled the large plastic bowl she'd brought for Atticus. He lapped up half of it without stopping. She topped it off, then lifted the bottle to her own lips and guzzled the refreshing liquid. She hadn't realized how thirsty she was until she started drinking. Atticus resumed his wandering, and Jamie glanced around. Now what? She had him here, just as she planned, but she hadn't thought about what it would be like after that. There were so many things she hadn't really thought out ahead of time, and now the reality hit her. In her haste, there were details she'd ignored. One of those details she hadn't considered was how she'd feel about leaving Atticus alone in the woods. What if he was scared? But she had no choice. She had to be back to the house before her mother woke and discovered she was gone. Well, let's go out one more time, Atticus, just to make sure you're set for a few hours. This time she didn't bother to snap the leash on him. He was well trained to respond to her command to return to her. Before going out, she took the flashlight to each of the windows and shone it out into the woods to make sure there was nothing waiting to pounce. Still uncomfortable, she cracked open the cabin door and poked only the flashlight and her head out. All looked clear, so she relaxed. She patted her thigh and clicked her tongue. Okay, let's go, Addie. Atticus brushed past her, found a tree that apparently was inviting, and lifted his leg. Then, his tail wagging as if this were the most exciting time in his life, he dashed to more trees and repeated the leg lifting. Jamie followed with the flashlight beam on him. After he had visited half a dozen trees, she patted her thigh again. Okay, enough already, she said, yawning. I know we haven't had rain for a while, but you don't need to water every tree in the forest. Atticus loped to her side. I do appreciate you trying to do your part, though, she said. They went back into the cabin, and Jamie convinced Atticus to jump on the bench that held his blankets. He circled them, fluffed them with his paws, circled some more, then finally plopped down on the heap. He looked up at Jamie as if to invite her to join him. His eyebrows arched alternately while he waited. Well, I guess I can sit down with you for just a few minutes, but then I have to get back home. She tugged an edge of the blanket over and sat next to him. He stretched and laid his muzzle across her lap. The candles continued to flicker, and as she stared at them, her eyelids grew heavier. For just a moment, she let her eyes drift shut, but that was all it took. Atticus shifted against her, and Jamie rolled toward him, trying to draw warmth from his body. She started to curl into a ball, savoring the aroma of blueberry and cooking cupcakes. Why was her mother baking before school? But it smelled so good, so homey. Then awareness startled her into instant alertness. Attempting to orient herself, she glanced at her surroundings. A faint light filtered through the windows. Oh no! She jumped up from the bench and pulled her cell phone from her pocket. Atticus, startled by her sudden movements, leaped to the floor and stood alert. Jamie looked at the time. 5:45. Her mother would be getting up in 30 minutes. Atticus, let's go. She hurried him outside to go to the bathroom once more. Then she put dry food in a bowl, checked the water bowl again, blew out the candles, and left the dog Kong with a milk bone in it on the bench. Once Atticus discovered the toy, trying to get the biscuit out of it would keep him occupied for hours. Kneeling, she cradled his face in her hands. I'll be back later, Addie, right after school, I promise. You be a good boy. He tilted his head as if trying to understand what she was telling him. When she started to the door, he followed. No, boy, you stay here. I'll be back later. She didn't want to end on the word stay, for fear Atticus would sit in the same spot waiting for her to return and give the next command. His tail wagged slowly and close to his body, telling Jamie that he understood she was leaving him. You only have to stay here for a couple of days, Atticus. I promise. It'll be worth it. You'll see. Without looking back, she went out the door and then put the padlock on it. Atticus whimpered and scratched at the wood. You're okay, Atticus. I'll be back soon. She dashed toward the path leading out of the woods. If he whimpered again, she didn't want to hear it. It would break her heart. She stopped once and turned to look back at the cabin, gasping to catch her breath. Atticus had climbed on the bench and was watching her through the window. He barked once with a sharp, worried tone. Guilt tingled in her chest. She had to do this. He was a dog he didn't understand. She'd be back in a few hours. There were many times at the kennel when he and the other dogs were left alone for that long, she reasoned. He'd be just fine. At least, that's what she kept telling herself as she ran out of the woods, hopped on her bike, and raced home. If her mother caught her coming in, it was all over. There was no way she was going to lie to her mother. Jamie wasn't so sure that omitting certain facts wasn't lying, but at least it wasn't an outright lie. The side door to the house was locked. She unlocked it, slowly pushed it open, and tiptoed into the kitchen. Everything was still. The rising sun bathed the rooms with a light orange tinge. Jamie crept through the rooms and made her way upstairs, taking each step slowly to avoid as much creaking as possible. She slipped into her room, pushed the door closed with the handle turned so there was no latch clicking, and then breathed a sigh of relief when she finally collapsed on top of her covers. There was no doubt this was one of the longest nights of her life. A knock on her door startled her awake. Yeah? Her head was fuzzy, and the words sounded garbled to her own ears. The door opened and her mother poked her head in. Jamie, did your alarm go off? It's 6:30. Jamie squinted at the clock on her nightstand. She couldn't believe she had drifted back to sleep for half an hour. I guess I must have forgotten to set it, she mumbled. Her mother opened the door more and stepped in. Did you sleep in your clothes? Jamie groaned and rolled over to the edge of the bed. Yeah, I guess I did. I was so tired that I lay down for a minute and must have fallen asleep. Her mother nodded. The heat will do that. You better get moving, though. You're going to miss the bus. Jamie stretched her arms, arched her back, and yawned again. I think I'll ride my bike today. That way I can go to the kennel earlier. She wondered if her voice sounded casual, as if this was a normal day. Her next thought was of Charlotte. Had she been out to the kennel yet and discovered Atticus was missing? She didn't have to wait long for an answer. While she was in the shower letting the warm water soothe her tense muscles, her mother came to the door. Her mother never hovered, but it seemed today she was constantly at the door to whatever room Jamie was in. Jamie? Yeah? Charlotte's on the phone. Jamie froze with the water racing in rivulets down her body. Really? What does she want? Her heart raced into high gear. She can't find Atticus. She said it looks like he pushed open the door to his outside kennel during the night, and he's nowhere around there. Jamie turned off the water and wrung out her hair. Oh no, she told me she was going to have that latch fixed. She reached out and snatched her towel from the rack on the front of the shower door, wondering if she sounded sufficiently concerned. What is she going to do? Well, she's still on the phone. She's wondering if you can take a few minutes to look around here in case he got it in his head to come looking for you. Yeah, tell her I can be ready in a few minutes. I'm going to call your school and my principal at the high school to let them know we may be a bit late. Charlotte sounded so upset that I feel I have to at least help for a little while. She's been there for me whenever I needed her since Dad. Her mother's voice stopped abruptly, leaving the end of her sentence unfinished. But they both knew the ending was unnecessary. After a few seconds, she said in a strained voice, Anyway, I have to get Haley on the bus first. Jamie wrapped herself in the towel and met her mother in the hall. I'll get dressed and look around here, and then I'll ride my bike to Charlotte's. Maybe I'll find him along the way. Okay, her mother said. I'll go tell Charlotte. Tell her I'll have my cell phone with me, and I'll call her as soon as I spot him. Her mother's voice trailed off as she hurried down the stairs. I will. Haley charged from her room, bellowing, Mom, I want to help too. Her voice echoed through the upstairs. You have to go to school, Peanut, Jamie said. I'm sure it won't take long, and we'll find him. But I wanna... No. Jamie cut her off, and Haley's bottom lip immediately jutted out. Jamie's shoulders drooped, and the towel loosened. She clutched at the wrap and leaned down to Haley. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of worried, I guess. I didn't mean to yell at you, but you can be the biggest help if you get yourself dressed and get your own breakfast so Mom doesn't have to worry about it. Haley looked at her dubiously. Trust me, Haley. Mom will be really impressed and think you're such a big girl if you do that. Haley propped her hand on her hip and jutted it forward. I am a big girl. I know, Jamie agreed, and this is a really good way to show it. Haley stared at her as if weighing the truth. Finally, she marched past Jamie and down the stairs. "Mom," she screeched again, "I want to make my own breakfast this morning, 'cause I'm a big girl. I'm almost out of first grade." Jamie hurried into her room and dried off quickly. She pulled on jean shorts and a hot pink sleeveless t-shirt that said, "Girls just want to have fun," across the chest. Her mother often commented on the shirt's message, and in the end, she might make Jamie take it off before leaving for school, but for now it would do. She slipped into socks and sneakers, knowing a true search would require her to go through grassy areas where sandals would be annoying. She grabbed her sandals to put in her backpack and started down the stairs. 2 steps down, she stopped and turned around. The t-shirt was a bad idea. It would look like she was being rebellious if she wore it. The last thing she needed right now was attention on herself. Dashing back to her room, she yanked it over her head and flung it onto the bed before pulling out a lime green shirt with sparkly stars cutting across the middle. Okay, this would not draw attention. She pulled it over her head as she exited her room. Her mother met her at the bottom of the stairs. "I've looked outside and around the house, but I didn't see Atticus anywhere." "I'll go out and call him to see if he comes," Jamie said. "Then I'll head over to Charlotte's." In the kitchen, she dropped her backpack next to the door. "Can you bring my backpack with you?" She grabbed a pre-wrapped coffee cake from the cupboard and ripped off the cellophane. "Yes, and that's not a very good breakfast, Jamie," her mother scolded. "I know, but for today it's going to have to do. I'm worried about Atticus." Jamie's mind raced as she started out the side door. Was she saying the right things? Is this how she should act if Atticus was really missing? "I'll meet you at Charlotte's, Mom." She jumped from the top landing of the side porch, past the 3 steps, and onto the sidewalk. The coffee cake tasted like sawdust in her mouth. There was no doubt she was not a natural-born liar. She tossed the half she hadn't eaten toward the tree, figuring a squirrel or the birds would love the treat. She, on the other hand, suddenly wanted to vomit. She hadn't anticipated how hard it would be to deceive 2 of the people she loved the most in the whole world. "Atticus! Atticus!" She decided her voice sounded too calm. She took it up a pitch and tried to sound more frantic. "Atticus! Where are you? Come here!" After making a good show of searching around the exterior of the house, she took her bike from the garage. The bus was lumbering up the road when she was almost to her grandparents' farmhouse. The driver waved as he pulled to a stop at the Jensen's house, and she waved back. Christy Jensen hurried from her house, her backpack flopping from her arm. "Hey, Jamie, I'll see you in homeroom," Christy called. "Won't be there," Jamie called back. "Atticus is lost. I'm going to help find him. I'll come in later." Everyone in her class knew who Atticus was. She'd brought him in for a demonstration when her English teacher had assigned how-to projects in the spring. Each student had had to write a report on how to do something and then demonstrate. She'd used Atticus and had done her project on how to properly care for a dog. The other kids had fallen in love with him and had unofficially adopted him as the class mascot. Jamie hadn't minded. It meant she could take him into school for special occasions, and she'd been proud to show how she handled him. Christy stopped with her foot on the bus's first step. "Oh, no, Atticus is lost? I'll tell everyone at school." Jamie halted her bike a few feet away. "No, that's okay. I'm sure we'll find him somewhere." "Well, everyone will want to know. Good luck." Christy climbed the stairs, and the bus door squealed as it closed. Jamie maneuvered her bike farther away from the bus and watched it pull away. Some of the windows were open, and she heard Christy bellow to the other students, "Atticus is lost!" And then the rest of the kids pressed their faces to the window to look at Jamie. The sick feeling returned to her stomach. This was just one more detail she hadn't thought of when she'd hatched this plot. Christy was the biggest gossip in 8th grade. By the time she reached homeroom, the entire school would know Atticus was missing. Jamie would get into school, and everyone would make a big deal and fuss over her, feeling sorry for her, and she'd have to pretend to be distraught. Atticus had been in hiding for barely 7 hours, and Jamie was already losing control of the situation. She sat back on the bike seat and started to pedal, wishing for just a moment that the road would suddenly open up and swallow her whole. What a mess, and this was only the beginning. So that's the end of chapter 5. I have a couple of questions that are good for getting the students thinking about Jamie's decisions, how they might react to some of the things that she's doing, and what they would do if they were in her shoes. So the questions, first of all, Jamie's hiding Atticus because she thinks that's the right thing to do right now. She's hoping she can change Charlotte's mind before the man comes on Saturday to buy him. And this is Thursday in chapter 5. Jamie isn't being fully honest or truthful when it's discovered Atticus is missing. She's not outright lying, but she's also not being honest. How do you feel about that? Do you think it's right for her to be telling these little white lies and not being honest with her mother and Charlotte? What problems do you think this could cause for her? And if you think it can't cause problems, think really hard about consequences when someone's not honest. And finally, what are your thoughts about Atticus out in the woods by himself? Do you think that's a good idea? What problems do you see there? He's locked in the cabin, so at least he's safe that way. But think about him being out there all by himself. If you have any comments or questions, as always, you can put them down below this video. I'll be sharing it in just a minute. We'll do chapter 6 tomorrow at 1:30, barring anything else coming up, like repairmen who are up on my roof trying to fix the dish. And I'll see you later if you're coming to listen to Attic Letters. Have a great afternoon. Bye, everybody.